All right, welcome everybody. I appreciate you coming. This is our second Longhorn Business Network event. Thought I'd give you just 1 minute of background on this. During the pandemic, we thought a lot about how we're going to help our Longhorn run businesses. If you guys recall back in 2020, they were predicting some pretty apocalyptic things. And so as an alumni association, we began thinking about how do we help all those folks out there that are running Longhorns running businesses. And so this was born in the pandemic, and it's really cool to see where we are today. So we launched what we call the Longhorn Business Listing. So it was essentially a place where Longhorn businesses could go and register for free, and we would promote them to the 570,000 Longhorn nation. And so really just trying to promote our businesses, and it's grown. So today we have from a listing a full-blown Longhorn Business Network, and that's our dedication to supporting Longhorn run businesses. And it's networking events like this. How do we meet? How do we introduce fellow entrepreneurs of the university to each other? How do we connect them to people that are important to their success? We've also got some things we're working around recruiting. How do we get y'all access to talent, whether it's academic talent or student or employee talent from the university? So there's lots of things that are going into how does the Texas Exes help our Longhorn run businesses? You can join in the back. I encourage anybody here who's not in the listing and is a Longhorn business, please register. It's free. We're going to promote you to Longhorn Nation. And if you choose to want to help us support things like this and all of the other things that come with it, please join as a member, and we can do that in the back. It's $1,000 a year. It's tax deductible, and it goes to the mission of the X's. So, commercial over. Now I'd like to introduce our guest tonight. Tiffany and Leon Chen started Tiff's Treats in 1999 as 19-year-old sophomores at UT Austin. They started with $20, a cell phone, and a dream, and over the past 20 years have grown the business to 85 retail distribution centers and counting, employing more than 1,700 employees with a valuation over $500 million. Tiffany and Leon Chen both graduated from UT in 2001 and live in Austin with their twins. In addition to running Tiff's Treats, they often keynote at events such as South by Southwest and for companies like Southwest Airlines and Dell Technologies. They have been chosen as Ernst & Young's Entrepreneurs of the Year. They have supported dozens of fellow entrepreneurs as investors and given back to their community by supporting local nonprofits such as Foster Angels of Central Texas, the Andy Roddick Foundation, and Conner Mann Foundation. Please welcome Anthony and Tiffany Chen. Leon Chen. I was reading your nonprofit again. Anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Light, who's going to run the event. Sarah is our head of business development. Sarah, over to you.
Hello, welcome.
Thanks.
I feel very loud all of a sudden. No? Did it just go? Oh, there we go. Okay, so y'all have a book, which a lot of times when I get books from different biographies or businesses, it's a lot of fluff. And I thought this was so good. Like, I thought it was such a good read because it especially if you are looking to scale a business, I just thought you guys gave a lot of really great advice and not just, the recipes, which are fun too.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I really liked, and I think this is such a great lesson for so many entrepreneurs, is that, and Tina faces this too, and you said it too, about say yes and then figure it out. And your story was so much say yes and then figure it out. So I want to start at the beginning. And the beginning was, the story goes that you stood him up on a date, you baked him cookies, you thought it was a good business idea, you didn't say yes, then you said yes and you started. And so you started with the cookie, the white box, and the ribbon. And was it a blue ribbon from the start?
It wasn't. No, it was, we were thinking of colorful ribbons. And the reason we did the ribbon was, it was actually Leon's idea. We were thinking of how we could package the cookies, and we found a white bakery box just off the shelf. So we said, okay, that seems good. And then Leon said, what if we add a special touch to it? We have our favorite restaurant from where we're from, which is in Richardson outside of Dallas. And there's a cafe there, and they tie a little bow around their napkin, their silverware. And it's just a nice little touch. And so he said, we should do it just like Cafe Max does. And so I think we went to Hobby Lobby and we just picked assorted ribbon colors. So no, wasn't with
the cookie that you baked him. Was it the cookie in any way that you're still baking today?
It's almost in every way.
Exactly.
It's very, yes.
was the recipe like, did you have a family recipe that a grandma had taught you?
Yeah. So my mom had taught me to bake. It was just sort of a hobby that I did. And so that was it's chocolate chip, obviously. And that's what I baked and sent over to him. And so we worked from that recipe. And certainly you change it over the years in terms of scaling the size of the batches. In terms of the integrity of the cookie, it's very, very similar.
Well, and Leon, why was it? I mean, I'm sure you'd had fresh baked cookies before, you
I
know.
actually had.
You had
No, like,
no one baked you fresh cookies.
no, I didn't really grow up in that kind of environment.
Okay, so it really was a magical moment for you.
Yeah.
You didn't have grandmas baking you cookies.
No.
And what made you think, oh, this should be a business?
You know, I was looking for something to do,
Okay.
and I just thought at the time, besides Pluckers and Asian food, there really was no delivery. And,
Yeah.
And it was like kind of on a whim. I honestly, when she said no, I could have dropped it. She doesn't, she doesn't.
We
remember
disagree
that.
on
We
this point.
disagree on this, but I literally was like, okay, that was it. That is not a viable business.
But also, weren't you inspired to start looking to do something on your own because of the summer job that you had?
Yes, I won't name any names, but I interned a couple years at a place in our hometown in Dallas, and I just remember everybody there so bored. And then at 5 o'clock on the dot, it was just like they were just so excited, and I was thinking, oh no, I'm going to school, business major here at UT. I was like, is this my life? Is this what I'm going to be doing? And it did not interest me in the least.
And what convinced you to say yes to giving it a shot?
His persistence. And this is why we disagree about this. I think he never would have dropped it, and it would have just been worse for me to continue to say no and then to just do the business. But no, he was convincing, and I think he got me to the place where I thought it was exciting and it could be something fun that we could do. I don't think we were thinking too far down the road as it more just like a side project.
Well, what did I tell you?
Well, he of course told me 3 things. 1, it was going to be really fun. 2, it was going to be really easy. And 3, we'd make lots of money. So that was like a pretty good sales pitch. And none of those things turned out to be true in the least.
Yeah.
Well, and you say that the first year you were working 100-hour weeks, you weren't making money, you were just making money off tips, and then you lost $13,000.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people would say, well, cool, the smart business decision is to quit because this isn't working, but you felt that something was working. So what was it that, why did you continue and push through?
Yeah, we were saying earlier that we're not numbers people. We're not finance people. I mean, we know what the negative number is, but what was working was there was magic around the brand, and there was magic around what we were doing. People were very, very excited about it, even though we were tiny. We were out of Leon's apartment. All we really had to our name was some flyers we had printed from Kinko's, but it was sparking something in people that they were very excited about what we were doing. And as long as we had that going, we never even considered the idea that we shouldn't continue.
Was it the Kinko's right over here across from Dean Keaton?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Is that still around?
No, is it? I don't think it is.
Okay.
Very important place, especially because I was at school at the same time. That place was hopping.
Yeah.
So you guys, we're going to get into the scaling. So I want to talk about when you got your second location. How did you know it was time, and why did you choose Dallas? And looking back, would you have done it differently?
It was a complete disaster mistake, right?
It was a mistake. And I think, yeah, looking back, we definitely would have done it differently.
Yeah.
Our thought process and why we wanted to why was it time to do a second location? I think we felt we had gotten to a point in Austin where we were pretty well known, and we were having like the success from that store that we wanted. We thought it might be kind of topping out to where it was going to be.
We wildly misjudged Austin's growth and the capacity of the city of Austin to have cookies. We thought we were only a downtown kind of location, because our bread and butter has always been the university plus offices, doctor's office, law firms, and stuff like that. So we thought we had to be in a downtown location to succeed, erroneously.
So the next nearest downtown that we were familiar with was Dallas, because that's where we were from. So we thought we were going to be a 1 unit in per city in the main downtown area.
And so as you guys grew, and I think it's the 3rd and 4th store didn't come until 2008, 2009. So it was like 10 years. But as you were scaling up as a company, what were your biggest fears? And really what I want to dig into is how did you keep a consistent product and how did you keep the culture?
Yeah, those are really great questions.
A lot of questions. We can
Biggest
dive into.
fear,
Just
I mean,
going out of business.
like I was always afraid it was just going to topple in on itself and just
And it
collapse.
very well,
Yeah.
should have.
Could
We were hitting our stride here in Austin and making some decent money, but we were losing so much money out of our downtown Dallas location, which now is I think it's our #1 store in the
Mhm.
entire unit. But we were losing so much money. There were nights I would wake her up because I have trouble sleeping when I'm worried about something. She just sleeps no matter what is going on. She can sleep. So I resent her sometimes. So I'll wake her up if I'm worrying.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she will get up and worry with me. And those were those were the early days when I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. We're not making anywhere near enough money to sustain the business.
Yeah, and I think opening it not in the same city was harder to manage than we thought. And there were consistency issues. So one big mistake we made was we were fortunate to have a really good management team here, and we moved several key members, and they actually moved to Dallas and ran the day-to-day operations of that location while we ran more of Austin and also all of the business functions. And we mistakenly thought that empowering them meant to let them do their own thing, and we didn't want to step on their toes. But in doing that, we actually didn't really provide them as much support and guidance as we needed to. We weren't acting as a cohesive unit when we were making decisions about systems and processes that were going to happen in the store. And ultimately, one of the things that happened from that was they actually, in those days, we would make our own dough in the store, and then we would portion it out on this portioning machine, and then you bake to order when an order comes in. Well, their portioning machine was set differently than ours, and it ended up making their dough pucks, we call them, a little larger than the Austin ones were. And because of that, then they ended up cranking up the temperature a little bit in the oven. And so they ended up just having, and this is in pretty short order, within a year, their product was slightly different than what we were serving in Austin, even though it was all one company and company owned and operated. And we realized that we shouldn't be empowering them by just letting them do whatever they want. There's still a way to let them have their freedom, but at the same time, we would come together and create solutions that worked for the entire business. And the biggest takeaway that we had from that was in-person meetings. So we would do an in-person once a month get together with the Dallas crew and the Austin crew and come together and solve problems together.
You would bring them together?
Yeah, we would all alternate whether we were in Austin or Dallas, and we were part of it.
Yeah.
And that way all of us together would solve problems and move forward as one cohesive unit.
Who was advising you at this point? Like when you guys were starting to open a Dallas location, like who were your people that you were kind of working through some of these issues with, or was it just the two of you figuring it out?
Oh no, we were very fortunate from very early on to find some mentors that, one of them specifically, his name is Mike Joyce. He's a businessman here in town. He actually is a broker by trade, but he owned and sold like 20 businesses in his career. And early on, he helped us find our first location. Then he started realizing we were doing some dumb things in the stores, and he was like, "Hey, come here." And he would just help us. And to this day, he is actually still on our board of directors all these years later.
And were you just sometimes noticing the cookie difference by being secret shoppers and going to Dallas and delivering, or?
We weren't secret. I mean, we were in Dallas a ton. So we would be in the store a lot. And so we could see it.
You could see it.
Yeah.
Now, what about culture? How do you transfer culture? And I know you guys have the five things that anybody who comes now learns, but how did you in the beginning transfer culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the things that we had done with that particular move was that we moved people that were part of our culture already. So we weren't hiring an entirely brand new staff that was all from Dallas. A lot of them were from Austin. And it really comes down to that in-person time that we had with each other and just being really, really in touch with what was going on while we were small and while you could still do it that way.
It was actually easier back then. Now it's harder, right? Spread out over the country, and not being able to have, close down the office and go to a picnic together. It's very difficult now. And that's something that we focus on a lot.
So how are you tackling that now as a much bigger company?
So now you have to just have a little bit more systems around it. So you're talking about the top 5. So people learn what the values are, but not just learning the first day, but it's part of kind of our vocabulary all the time. We have Slack channels that integrate All store managers and assistant store managers are on there. So there's lots of chatter between all of the different locations. So you can create kind of a feel of people that are all going towards the same goal. So I think communication is probably the biggest piece.
All right. Well, we'll get back into the top 5. Another thing I want to talk about as y'all scaled was the technology aspect, because you probably never thought that when you were going to make cookies that you would also be a technology company in a lot of ways, because when Tiff Street started, there was no DoorDash or Uber Eats, and you guys decided as part of your scaling to develop your own technology so that we could get the cookies fresh baked.
Yeah, we stumbled upon that pretty early on. We used to handwrite them, then we put orders into QuickBooks, and then we decided to try to build our own software early on. What, 3 or 4 different tries until we actually got something that was workable?
Yeah. So what happened was we were trying to put our systems into off-the-shelf software. And at the time, you have to remember that this is in 2000, 2001. There just isn't a ton of tech that's out there.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get what we were both, giftable, but also deliver for yourself, also order right now, but also you could schedule it for the future. And the type of product that we were doing software hadn't been used for this kind of thing. So eventually we just said, well, we'll just have to hire somebody to build it. And to Leon's point, we went through 3 different developers, and each one we probably worked with for at least daily for at least 6 months. The first one, you say ghosted now. And at the time we coined it black hole, like he went into a black hole in space, because he never, like one day we were working with him and then the next day we just never heard from him. His name is Phil. So Phil, if you're out there, we're so curious about you. I think he got in over his head and our budget wasn't big. And I think our expectations for what we could get for that budget was outsized. And we did that 2 more times. And then finally, the 3rd time, or I guess it was the 4th time we did it, was through a contact. So like a friend of a friend. So somebody that we already had some sort of relationship with. And they worked nights and weekends on top of their regular job, doing this contract job for us. And finally, we got in 2005, we launched our software, which at the time just took orders. And it was a way for us to input our orders really in a custom way. And then since then, we've built upon it, and now it really runs all of the operations. It's very robust.
It's a full-fledged system, and we started realizing early on that this was our competitive advantage. I mean, and I think the difference is this piece of software was really built by operators to solve real problems out there. A lot of the softwares out there today even are built by software companies to try to solve problems in a certain industry. And not to say that that doesn't work, but what really helped us is that it was custom for everything we needed to do. Because at the end of the day, when we started, and still to this day, we kind of created the industry that doesn't exist. And to this day, on-demand gifting, there's on-demand delivery now with DoorDash and whatever, but on-demand gifting, if you think about, you could forget someone's birthday this morning and place an order, and in an hour and a half get a very nice gift over to them, and it doesn't feel like you forgot it, even though you did.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. I think a lot of us have probably done that. And, if somebody's saying like, oh, what can I get last minute? Tiff Streets is always an option. I think you said in the book that a lot of people thought you were crazy in trying to invest so much money and time and effort into the technology. Again, how did you just say, nope, this is the way? How did you stay the path and then just dig deeper?
Yeah, almost everybody gave us that advice. Don't build something, just buy something off the shelf. But I think at that time, most of the people that were saying that were sort of older than we were. And when you're in your early 20s, you're like, everything. So we knew better, and we just charged forward, because truly we did think, look, we've tried it off the shelf. It's not working. We need something streamlined, and we need something that's really going to work for us in the way we want it to work. And ultimately, it's been a benefit.
I think you guys have done a really good job of listening to your customers. And as you go through the book also, and just being a customer too, how much has listening to customers helped you grow your business and direct it the way it goes?
Oh yeah, it's everything. I mean, our second best-selling cookie flavor of all time was a customer request.
What is it?
Snickerdoodle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Snickerdoodle was not on our original menu, and frankly, he and I didn't even know what a Snickerdoodle was, but that was customer request. So we looked it up and we were like, okay, we can make one of these.
Yeah, we'll make our own version of the Snickerdoodle.
Yeah, and yeah, it's our number 2 most popular.
And that's how you also you figured out that y'all were a gift company in some ways is through listening to the customer, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great point, because when we started, we were really just thinking of the snackability of it, the convenience of the delivery, that it would be fresh baked, and all of these things still are true. But sending it to somebody else as a gift hadn't occurred to us until a customer called and said, hey, could I send this to somebody else? And we said, I don't know why not.
And that really probably was a turning point of the entire business, is when we realized, we call these warm cookie moments. We realized what we were actually providing was more than just tasty cookies hot. It was these moments of connectability and these incredible moments. And that was from listening to customers. I put it in the book early on. One of my favorite stories is someone from downtown Austin called to place an order, and our manager at the time, Lindsay, she picks up the phone and they start talking, and Lindsay says, you guys doing anything special? You know, is this order for anything special? And the admin said, oh yeah, it actually is. And she begins to tell Lindsay, you know, today it's raining outside in Austin, and my boss, our boss here in the office, whenever it rains, he tells us the same story every single time it rains, to the point where we're rolling our eyes. And the story is, when he was a little boy, every time it rained outside, he knew when he was at school, he'd come home and his mom would have fresh baked cookies for him. And so he tells us the story all the time. And the admin goes on to say, well, today is the first day that it's rained since his mother passed away recently. And so we're here in the office getting cookies, and we're celebrating her life, and we're sharing them, you know, with our boss. And, you know, right when we heard that story, we started hearing more. They became, you know, weekly, daily. And now, you know, we get those kind of stories all the time. They're just these amazing moments that we were providing. And that really was a turning point of the business.
What a privilege, right?
Yes,
To be able to hear that and have a business that affects people in that way.
Yeah.
That's really cool. You also said that, so a snickerdoodle was a customer request. I think what you guys have done also so well is, at the end of the day, I'm not going to say it's simple in a bad way, but you were like, it's a simple chocolate chip cookie, a simple sugar cookie, like way better than I can make at home, but, you know, evokes a lot of memories. You know, there's a lot of competitions. There's a lot of different cookie types of businesses out there, a lot of different, it could be ones with funny sayings on it. You could do so many other things. How often are you filtering out all of these ideas, and how did you know to stay true to what your original purpose was?
Kind of easy for us because of operations, right?
So yeah, being simple was really key to us. You know, there was just the two of us to start. So doing something complex was not a possibility. You can't run a 2-person show and have some really complex operations.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think we knew that was part of our strengths, was that our menu was simple, our concept was simple, the operations were simple to execute, and we didn't want to complicate that. And that has been very, very helpful for us. But you're right. I mean, ideas fly all the time, forever. They always have, and they still do.
Have some not worked? Have you tried one and you're like, well, shouldn't have done that?
Oh, cookie run?
Yeah.
Maple bacon,
We did maple bacon. It wasn't great.
meat and cookies does not
I
work.
mean, if you're gonna do meat, make it bacon, but it was soggy and it wasn't great.
Terrible idea, because Gordo's does the bacon on
It's
the donut.
not a bad
Yeah,
idea.
maybe it was the execution. It was awful.
It was the execution, but also you have to think about that the cookies are baked and then delivered while they're still really hot out of the oven. So it kind of restricts some of the things that you may or may not do in terms of like topping cookies, because it'll melt and fall apart on the way there. So it kind of has to be included. And that was the problem with the maple bacon specifically, was that the bacon was included within the dough and then it just got soggy.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's not a terrible idea. It didn't work.
Yeah, and really one of our top 5 is we protect the brand, and in that we talk about the bar we set for ourselves. It's really from a book called Good to Great. I don't know, I'm dating myself by saying that book. Apparently, it's, you know, it's pretty old at this point, but in it they talk about being the best in the world at what you do, and so it really resonated with us, and that's where we kind of set our bar. Like, we could get into all this other stuff, but we're not going to do anything that's going to get in the way of us being the best in the world of baked to order, on demand, made from scratch cookies. And
Yeah.
so that kind of filters everything out.
I applaud y'all for doing that, because as a customer, every time it's so consistent, it's so good. And I love that you do what you do and you know what you're good at. I want to get to questions. I do want you, because we've mentioned the top 5 twice. I just want you to let everybody know what the top 5 is, because I think as you scaled, it's something that helps the whole company know who and what you are about. So
Yeah,
speak
yeah.
to that real quick, and then I'm going to y'all for questions.
So we'll be as brief as
Yeah,
possible.
Let me just tell you what.
And I have it here in the book if you, I'm sure you have them all by memory.
Oh, no,
So
it's
it's memorized.
So where that came from was at this point, 10 to 15 years ago, I guess we sat down with our leadership group as we were starting to open more locations and scale. And we said, what is it that's resonating with customers and what is it that's keeping us as a cohesive group? And let's write this down and figure out what it is. So we had a group of probably 10 or 15 of us brainstorm through about what is important to us, what we think makes us special. And we landed on what we call the Tiff's top 5. And it's just, 5 of our top rated values. And since then, we've really integrated that into the culture of our vocabulary at Tiff's Treats. And it helps us make decisions like he was just talking about.
Right. And the first value we put up there is, look, at the end of the day, if you don't know any of the values or forget the values, just remember that we get to make people happy. And it's such an, like you said, a privilege. It's so amazing. And we tell the story of in the book, like we tell when people come up to us, they always like to tell us their first Tiff's Treats experience or their favorite Tiff's Treats experience. And still to this day, the one we get the most is somebody will say, I'll never forget the first time I had Tiff's Treats. We had our first baby, my wife and I, and my sister at the end of the day sends us these cookies. We're on the hospital bed with the baby and a box of cookies. We'll never forget it. And we get that a lot. And we love to tell the team about this because if you think about it, it's really rare for a brand to be able to sneak into what is probably someone's top moment of their life or top couple of moments of their entire lives, the birth of their baby.
Yeah.
You don't usually hear about a brand being involved in that, but we do. And so that's how we set the bar is like, look, that's how important these moments are to people.
Mm-hmm. And based off of that, number 2 is we make it right. One thing that we've learned over time, we were not good at this at the very beginning. Our customer service was not our forte in that very first 6 months to a year when it was just the 2 of us. Customers would call and say, oh, you gave me the wrong flavor, or you gave me 5 cookies instead of 6, but it was just the 2 of us. And we were like, no, I didn't. I know I didn't. And that kind of carried on a little bit too, even through people who were working at the store level or on the phone, sort of like a stress over, I did make a mistake or I didn't make a mistake, it's my fault or it's not. We make it right means if you were expecting to have a certain level of experience, and if for whatever reason, either you gave us the wrong address or we forgot your milk, or it doesn't really matter what the reason is, we are going to make that experience back up to you because you were hoping for this great warm cookie moment and you didn't get it. So it's our job to replace that experience, not to just refund you your money, not just to say, I'm sorry, but to redo the experience for free for you. So that has been part of us for a long time now. And it's been great for customer loyalty. I think when you're going to put in the hands of a company an important moment, you want to know that you can trust that if something goes wrong, it's a delivery business, things are going to go wrong from time to time, that they're going to take care of you.
Mhm.
And so that's why that's
awesome.
Yeah, we protect the brand. I kind of went through that. It's
For
just
sure.
making decisions that's it in the best interest of the brand, no matter what.
Okay.
Early on, when we needed money so bad, it was just so desperate. We had, gosh, I'd like to think it was Trudy's, but it was like a local restaurant and a couple of coffee shops. They're like, hey, why don't you guys bake a whole bunch of cookies and bring them over to us and we'll sell them on our menu. And it was really tempting because we needed every penny we could get, but we kind of thought, we're not in the cookie business. We're in the bake to order on demand warm cookie delivery business, and kind of would go against what we do. And so as tempting as it was, we said no.
Mhm.
And so that kind of goes into we protect the brand. Number 4 is we are passionate. This has taken its new meaning on. We hired our CFO back in 2012. He came along with our CTO, and they both had real jobs, we like to call them, making double the money, working half the hours as they were when they came to Tiff's Treats. And we'd be sitting there with them and in a conference room after a rough day. And literally, I remember looking up at them and saying, like, I really appreciate you being here, but why are you here? This is horrible. I know how much money you made and I know how much money you're making and I know how hard you're working. And, what they said really galvanized us as a group. They said, along the lines of what we're passionate about, like doing something that hasn't ever been done before. Like, look, this isn't just another Me Too business. We're creating this thing as we go along, and we get to be a part of something that never existed before. And so that you walk through the halls of our office, and we want people that believe in that as their mission, and not just a paycheck, not just a mercenaries, people that really want to do something amazing together.
And the final one, number 5, is we adapt and grow. One thing that we've learned about people, and I think it's true for most, change can make people feel uncomfortable. Some people really hate it. So we like to have that up there, because if you're hoping to come here and think that your job is going to be the same on the first day that you work here as the last day that you work here, it's probably not the place for you, because we are changing, we are growing. We do have to adapt our situation. We always did. Warm cookie delivery, baked to order was not an industry at all when we started, and is largely still not an industry now, which meant we are going to adapt our equipment to fit our needs. We're going to build software because we can't find another way to do it. Anytime that we find a new piece of technology that works better for us, we're going to integrate that and begin constant improvement and constant changes to our systems and processes as we grow. So that's just a piece of the puzzle that if it's not at least sort of exciting to you, then you might be in the wrong place.
I love it. I'm going to open it up to questions. If not, I can keep talking, but does anybody have a question? And we have a microphone because we do have an audience online watching. So right here. And if you own a business, feel free to state your name and your business.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Lauren Peters, and I actually do own a cookie business, and I am Longhorn. My company is called Cookie Rich.
Oh, yeah.
And my question is, if you had DoorDash and all of the avenues now, because I've obviously watched you guys when got Tiff Streets as in my dorm room my freshman year and beyond, but if you had all of those delivery channels back then, would you have used them, or knowing what you know now, are you happy that you developed your own systems? Because kind of as businesses now, that's our option.
An amazing
It's
question.
a great question, and it's hard to, that was so far away from being a reality for us that it's hard to go back in time and think what we would do. I know that we have always been pretty controlling over the experience. So I probably would say we would still have wanted to own that piece of it ourselves, just in terms of the reliability and we're going to show up, we're hopefully going to get there on time with a smile, the box isn't going to be crushed. I think those things still would have been important to us then, but it would have been a difficult decision because it totally changes. I mean, the delivery part, that's the complex part of the business.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting that you would ask that question, because I think the desperation of not having those avenues is the right, it creates the greatness, it's really, really interesting. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think those systems are improving too so much now than what they were before. So it becomes a new thing where you have to really think through whether you needing to control the experience is that as important as it used to be.
I will say that in business a lot, what we've learned is the easy solution isn't always the best solution. So it would have been an easier solution. And so sometimes the more difficult path, there's a lot of pain, but there's a bigger reward. So not saying anything bad about those systems at all, but yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you also have investment, which you guys, right now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy to think now. If you were starting, would you, like she asked, that I'm sure a lot of people would say you were crazy. And then again, you would have to just keep the path.
Yeah, I mean, the delivery aspect was so much of a part of the idea that I don't even know that if those kind of things were there, I think that the idea of Tiff Treats would have been something different.
Yeah.
Than it really was. Because what we really was filling this need that did not exist, or, there was a need and there was no solution for it. And that's what we were solving for. And then we ended up building a brand around it.
Is there another question? Oh, right here. Oh, and there was one there too. And then y'all are next.
I'm Julie Allen. I don't currently have a business yet. My husband's a realtor. Dragged him here. So on the issue of delivery, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are over the years on your staff. Kind of how do you keep them motivated? Like when I walk into stores, they're always happy, which is great. A lot of them may be like college kids. Like, how do you keep them engaged and always just it's a good vibe when I walk into.
Yeah, I think the number one thing, I'm not going to take credit for this. I'll just say that the number one thing that we hear from the team members that work in the store is, I love like they enjoy doing the process of the job, number one, but the bigger thing is number two, they love their coworkers. So I think it's really more about the team leaders that are in the store, the people that they work with on a day-to-day basis, and their store managers. If they're happy as a group, then they're happy for their customers. If you've got a misstep there, that's where I think it gets a little harder to have happy team members.
Yeah, and we keep trying to improve the experience, and we haven't been perfect by far, but some of the things that we do that a lot of companies don't do because it's very, very expensive is we provide our own vehicles. You know, if you guys have seen the Tiff's branded cars all around town,
When
our-
did y'all start that?
five, six,
2016 maybe?
yeah, maybe
Okay.
6 years ago. Yeah.
Something like that.
And I think we have, I don't know, 200 in our fleet now, but
Wow.
it's very expensive, but it gives them something, you know, they don't have to drive their own vehicle all the time. Sometimes they still do if one of our cars is taken, but it allows them to not have to put wear and tear on their actual vehicle. It's fully insured if there's an accident. There's just a lot of things that aren't easy for us as a business to do, but we do it because it is good for the experience for the employees.
Right here.
Hello, my name is Andre Lawson, and this is my wife, Mia Lawson. Together we have a business, Frostbite Italian Ice. We're actually based in Houston, Texas, and we started about a year and a half ago. And right now it's just the two of us, but we've seen a lot of success early on, and now we're trying to get to the next level. But we're wondering how you all built you all's core team, the team that you all had around you. I know you all spoke about, you know, the first person helped you all find the first location, but how did you all go about that process of finding trusted advisors, people who were, you know, really core to helping your business grow that initial phase?
Well, we were very fortunate, and something I think back on today all the time. We were very fortunate because our first delivery drivers were our friends' little brothers, and from our hometown. They just, you know, they literally wanted beer money, and they were doing it to help us out, and it became something else. And you know, out of our first 4 delivery drivers, they're with the company in different areas today. So there's this trust already built in, and that makes it a lot easier. We were very fortunate, and they say like be careful mixing, you know, personal and business, but you know, I had one of our closest friends recently join us. He had his own business and decided to just join us, and because there's that automatic trust built in, it just has made it so much easier. So I think that's
from a team member standpoint, and then from a mentor and advisor, really where we were finding these, it's those connections that you're not even thinking of.
Yes.
So you need somebody to do your taxes, right? So a lot of this came from, we had a CPA, and they sent a woman that would come and do our books. Well, we created a relationship with this woman, and then her husband's business partner became our first investor. He was a major investor. In fact, he's still on our board now. He's amazing. He's been great for advice. He's a great advisor. He was a financial backer in a major way. I'm trying to think. So Mike Joyce that he spoke about, that was because this is actually where failure works out okay. We did a 6th Street location. If you're familiar with 6th Street down here, it's like the strip of bars, which was a huge failure. We did that for about 6 months. And then the landlord that we had was very nice in letting us out of the lease because he knew it was not working. And did this turn off? No. His best friend happened to be this Mike Joyce person. And when we were looking for real estate, he connected us with Mike Joyce. And then we just created a relationship with him, not because we needed anything, but just as these people are coming in your life, you just start creating natural relationships with them. And then sometimes that leads to something that you never expected it to lead to.
Did y'all drive all the way in from Houston today? That's awesome.
Oh, fun.
Yeah,
Oh, that's great.
that's awesome. I like it.
awesome.
Was there another? Yeah.
Yeah, I had one. I'm William Pollack. I'm not an entrepreneur. I work in corporate as a procurement professional and operations strategist. One thing I'm fascinated by is the decision-making process, especially in some of your early days where you had real make or break times. Yeah, your second location was losing money. Your first location in its first year was a loss leader. You've clearly made the right decisions to be in such a successful place. Do you have a formula for making those stick to it or cut and run decisions?
You know, that's a great question. We try to bring up those old days in some of our decision-making processes now. Part of it is dumb luck, but part of it's just being young and naive and being bold. like our top 5, we didn't create a business plan and say, okay, this is what our values are going to be. And then try to build a business around it. We weren't smart enough to do that. If we did, I don't think we would have started. We would have looked at the business plan and we would have said, yeah, this isn't going to work, And so a lot of it is just evolving and not pressing, not trying so hard to say, oh, this has got to be perfect before I do X, Y, and Z. We just kind of did it, and
then I think the other thing that we've been talking about recently is just, look, failure is not an option, right? And so
Yes.
sometimes, especially in those early days, there's really only one option, and it's charging forward and not looking down and not getting wrapped up in what a foolish mistake you're making and just doing it. I'm not suggesting that for everybody, and sometimes you do make costly mistakes. But I also think if you're starting a business or growing a small business, it's hard to do that without making some of those big, scary moves.
yeah, all in is actually, we kind of miss those days. It's actually a lot harder now because it's like, well, you could do this and you could do that and you could do that. And like, you have so many decisions and you're gonna make the wrong one if you think too hard. Back in those days, like Tiff said, it was either all in, this is gonna work, or it's not gonna work. So really being bold is something I think is very, very underrated in business.
Do you look back and you're like, dang, that was cool? Like, what we were, because now as you get older, you're like, I was so bold back then,
I
you know?
I think it's more like, dang, that was stupid. It worked out, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Is there a question back here?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, you're good.
My name is Jennifer Johnston, and I have a gluten-free cookie business, Mom's Modern Mixes. And so I'm in the mix side of the cookies, but I'm to a point where I'm evaluating some of the things that y'all have evaluated in the past. And I'm wondering specifically about financing, because you said that was a connection of a connection who came to help back some of your financing. And as you grew, what helps you to decide how you give up either equity in that or shares or what helps you to feel comfortable when you're talking about your financing in your future like that?
We've learned through a lot of mistakes. We've had some hits and we've had some misses.
We've done a ton of different ways of financing. We started by borrowing, which on the one hand is great because you're not sharing the company with anybody. On the other hand, you'll be paying that back the rest of your life if it doesn't, go the way you wanted it to. So it's scary. And then we did take on investors. Well, I'll answer this. We took on investors because nobody would loan to us anymore. So when we got to the bottom of the barrel, it was time to go to another avenue.
But we were fortunate enough to have a track record. We were in business 7 years, or wait, it was like 9 years before we had our first investor. So it wasn't selling that person on a dream or what it could be. We actually had tangible things. We had our software system in place by the time we seek the investor.
Yeah, and that's really what that particular investor was interested in, that we had a brand that was already out there, established sales, and then the technology and a way to, and a means to grow with it. Like he said, if we had done that at the very beginning, we would have given away far more of our company for the same amount of money. So for us, it worked to do it that way. With that said, I think loans and lines of credits and things, it's a different environment now than it was when we were taking those out.
Yeah, and I would say one thing one of the things we're terrible at when it comes to making deals and is don't get enamored by the money, like be disciplined. We would say like, oh, if he asks for this, we're not gonna do it. We're not gonna. They're like, oh, we'll give you this much, and we're like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And every time we've done that, we've kind of regretted it later.
Yeah, I think we talk about that a little bit in the book, but you kind of come up with your non-negotiables, but think hard about what those really are, because the second somebody said, well, I'll do it, but on this, we were like, done, no problem. And we hadn't really thought through, is it really non-negotiable? And what piece is a non-negotiable? And like Leon said, we've never been good about walking away at the right time when that non-negotiable gets hit.
I do want to ask, since we are here at UT, do we have time for another question, or we have internet question? Why do I keep saying the internet? Like I'm not the internet? we have the online audience had some questions. Yeah.
We have a question from Zoom. Looking back, how would you prioritize the legal task list for getting the business going? Would you first file trademarks and then have employee handbooks, etc.? Or what legal to-do items would you do first and which would you save for later?
Yeah, we definitely could have done a lot better because when we started in our Hyde Park apartment, we had no idea, but it was completely illegal at the time to do a home-based
I
food business.
Ask that,
Yeah.
like, was it just like, we don't talk about that
Super
now?
illegal.
Oh, we're talking about it. We're talking
The limitations is passed by now. I think they have cottage laws now where I think you could actually do it if you're under a certain revenue amount. But like I said, that's the best part about being young and dumb. It's just like, okay, we didn't know. And even when we found out, I'm not gonna lie and say we immediately got a kitchen, but it was shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, you have to evaluate, I guess, the risk for everything that you're doing. You probably can't take on every single legal burden at the very beginning, both it's costly, number one, and sometimes it's prohibitive of you doing, like, taking that next step. We can't advise on trademark because we named our company Tiffany's Treats. And then when we went to file the trademark name, which was like 3 years later, Tiffany and Company said, no, you have to change your name. And so we had to do a whole settlement there, and that was very stressful.
Have you ever talked to anybody about that since? I mean, like, that's
Oh,
just
yeah.
insane to me. It's not like y'all were selling jewelry.
Well, okay, so
Yeah.
back then, I went really deep into this and tried to learn this, but back then, they were threatening to sue us on something called dilution, which isn't like we're in the same business, but they were claiming their brand is so, famous that anybody who uses any form of it would taint their business or could. They can't control what we sell or what we don't sell. And at the time, we could have won the case because at the time there was a very famous Supreme Court ruling where they said you have to actually be able to prove monetary dilution. Like you have to be able to prove that it actually hurt your business in order for you to win a dilution case. But we were so small, it was just not worth fighting for. But now
Yeah.
they changed that law to where now I think it's a little bit easier for the company to win a case.
Okay.
So they changed it a little bit.
Like, they might as well sue people for naming their kids Tiffany.
Well, it was,
like-
yeah, it's
No, I could keep my name personally. They were fine with that.
That's good.
But they did not want us to have any form of the name Tiff
Yeah.
at all. And so that was ultimately the settlement, is that we could shorten it to Tiff. So
Yes.
we
It
thought
all
it was a
worked
win.
out. It all worked.
It actually worked out really well because for the longest time before we kind of grew, other companies would come and they'd be called like Treats by Tiff or blah, blah, blah. And we would just send them a letter and be like, hey, just to warn you, like Tiffany and Company, they came after us. Like, you might want to change that name. Like, we didn't have to do anything. So we actually had this, guard dog for us for the
Yeah.
longest time. They were the threat, not us.
Love it. Another question right here up front.
Thank you. First, from 09 to 15, I probably sent Tiff's Treats boxes to every single capital.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for being willing to go down those halls and get lost.
Oh, we love
That's a long delivery.
Thank you. But with entrepreneurs, I'm an executive coach, and sometimes a lot of challenges, there's so many ideas.
It's working.
Okay, there's so
Just
many
trust it.
ideas. And it's hard to decide which one to go for. So my question for you is a little switch, but what would you be doing now if you didn't do Tiff's Treats?
Ooh.
Gosh,
Because marketing and advertising, right?
it is, but it's hard to answer because we started when we were 19. So we never completed college without this as a huge distraction, I would say.
She would have been a dance choreographer.
That was the other, yeah, that was the thing. But that's not what I was going to school for. But that was something that I did and really enjoyed. So that's definitely a possibility.
What would I do? I'd own
He
some
could have done
business.
something in business. I mean, he was looking for a business to start.
Nothing. We would do nothing. Like, we are one trick ponies. We are not gonna get ahead of ourselves and think that we're good at something. Like, we are just gonna ride off into the sunset if we sold Tiff's Treats. I will say we love the Capitol so much. We knew we were onto something when we'd get like this 500 box order, and we'd pass out like 10 boxes to each of the little offices, and the gift message was like, vote yes on House Bill 101. And then we get a call from someone else for another 500. It'd be vote no on House Bill 101. We're like, this is awesome. Like, we love the Capitol.
Are we good? Any more? Or should this be the final question? Okay, one more. Doubling up and final question. Are you ever jealous that it's not your name on the company?
Oh, no.
Oh,
Oh. It's not all good.
Was there a point in the company that was kind of pushing the snowball down the hill that really made it just scale quickly? Or is it always kind of like a step kind of up and like a slow growth? Because as a small business, I think we all would just want it to go fast.
Yeah, be
But-
careful what you ask for.
yeah. I mean, I'm always pulling us back and he's always pushing us forward. So that's probably why we grew it.
Mhm.
We would have grown differently if it was just one or the other of us. So we sort of balance each other that way. We were very slow to grow in the first, and then I think you have to balance the responsibility of growing in a way that you know that you can still perform to the brand standards that you put forward. And that's why I've always like kind of been the counterbalance, and then he's been the great one that, you know, really pushes us forward and says it's time to do the next thing.
Yeah, and growth comes at a cost. I was just saying, at the beginning of the pandemic, we grew so much. We had to hire 500 people in 6 weeks, and it was we knew how fortunate we were compared to a lot of the businesses out there, but it was very difficult, and that just kept going for all of 2020 and almost all of 2021. And you would think, oh, growth is wonderful, but it really cost us. I could tell at the time that it was going to cost us later, and we're now starting to see the price we are paying for that wonderful growth that we got, which is we were planning to set up infrastructure, leadership, grow our people. We had 3-year plans that really would have made us a much more solid foundation. And when 2020 hit, that just went out the window because we were fulfilling orders. And I knew it was going to come back and bite us. But now we're running into the problems where we're a much bigger company now, and we used to pride ourselves because we used to have a great foundation and infrastructure set up ahead of the curve and ahead of our growth. But now we're a little bit behind because of all that growth that came so fast.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Everybody should go buy the book. It's not just cookies. It does have recipe and all the tips we talked about today. And I just want to say, Austin has changed so much. And you guys will forever be part of the old Austin and also the University of Texas. And you're a part of us. You're ours. And I think I speak for everybody when we're always like proud to say like, oh, I ordered them back, in 2000, So thank you guys so much for being here and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for coming out. This is our first big event in person. We're going to have more. And so if everybody wants to chit chat, we can go out to the lobby where we have the drinks and we can talk. So thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.